Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Traveling Therapist Podcast. Really excited to have our guest today. Super interesting story, Laurie Giannola. Thanks for being here. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah.
I always start out and just say, how did you go from being a traditional therapist to a traveling therapist?
I worked for an outdoor wilderness program back when I first graduated in 2000. I was looking for something non-traditional. I was
Yeah.
looking for something that I can incorporate my love of nature and what I believed could be so valuable to kids,
Hmm.
and especially kids that really never had the chance. So it was a program for incarcerated kids.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was developed by a Native American Crow Indian and a man by the name of Bob Burton, and they fused together and they had this program. I'm not sure if it exists the way it doesn't, the way that it used to, but I was putting together horses. This is before Google. It was like Ask Jeeves.
Oh,
And
my
I'm like, how
gosh.
do I
Yeah.
find this? And I interviewed
Yeah.
for the job I'm from New York. I interviewed in Jersey. I went in
Uh-huh.
for the interview. I came out with the job, but he had asked me, do you want to, we have a position here and in Arizona. And I had never been to Arizona. So I was like, I'll go to Arizona.
Wow. How
Yeah.
adventurous.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're
Not
like, let's
knowing.
do this.
Yes, it was in the middle of the desert.
Oh, that is
Yeah.
cool. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, I remember when I was a teenager, right? I was kind of a troubled teen. I remember a psychiatrist suggesting she should go on one of these wilderness
Right.
camp adventure things that's going to help her
Mhm.
with boundaries and, all that stuff. And I know there's tons of programs out there like that exist for therapists to get involved in. And, maybe you could tell us a little bit about what those are, but I
Yeah.
imagine they're therapeutic whitewater rafting or hiking or
Yeah.
like
All of it.
learning skill sets from doing those type of activities and that sort of thing. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. They were typically inner city kids everywhere from California to Chicago. And
Wow.
this program specifically had what were called wagon trains, and they were old
Oh,
pioneer wagon trains. And we would take the kids out for months at a time. They would build their own teepees. We would cut the trees,
wow.
build their teepees. They would learn how to ride horses. I mean, these kids, some of them really
Mm,
thrived. They had never seen a horse. They
mm,
learned how to connect with an animal. They got to be
yeah.
kids probably for the first time in their lives. And, recidivism rate was 50%, we were
Mhm.
told, but putting them back into their environment was always tough. But we gave them that experience. They were adjudicated. So it
Mm.
was the courts
Oh,
that were
right.
saying, okay, it's a locked facility for the middle of nowhere, no fences. You can't really run far if you tried
Wow.
to run. Yeah. I spent 8 years just traveling around the country because they had programs in several states. So I was
Oh,
everywhere
neat.
from Florida to Arizona to where else was I? Maryland a couple of times, and Montana.
Oh,
So we
that
were
is so
everywhere.
cool. Were you already licensed at that point, or was that before your licensure? Oh, okay.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was my first job out of grad school with my
Wow.
license. Yep. And
Oh,
in Arizona. And I was with them for only 1 year at first. The
okay.
program was having some difficulties. All the programs, those type of programs, were having some
Sure.
struggles. Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm
And
already thinking like funding. Like I
yes.
would imagine that there would be
Hmm.
complications with that for sure. Yeah.
Yes, and there
Hmm.
was a lot of those Scared Straight programs at the time.
Oh,
So they were
yes.
trying to move out of military style and add the therapy component. So it was tough at first. There was really not a
Yeah.
lot of clinical staff. So it was like,
Yeah.
they kind of threw us in. So I was there for a year, and then I did resign to come back to New York. And oddly enough, while I was here, 9/11 happened.
Oh
So
my gosh.
I got to be part of a crisis unit that went down
Mm.
and worked with survivors and
Oh my gosh.
victims. The families of the victims. But then I called my former boss and I asked for my job back. And he
You were
was
like,
like,
"I'm
I knew
ready.
you'd be back.
I'm
I know
ready."
you're kind. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
Mm,
wow. And I read your bio, that really is you, like, being out in nature and just and
yeah.
really adventurous, that type of personality, that type of spirit. That's amazing. So you did that for how long did you say? 8
I
years?
did that for 8 years
Okay.
total. That includes the first time. And then I was promoted to clinical director. And
Wow.
yeah, from there, I, wanted a change of pace and came back to New York and started working for a DBT clinic. And loved it. Just loved DBT, loved
Oh,
that part of
nice.
it, and still got to do, I was certified in equine assisted psychotherapy. So still
Yes.
got to do that up here, connected up with some barns and got to do that. So I was up here for a couple of years with the DBT clinic. And then from there, I went to Kaiser Permanente.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow, what a
So
difference.
real difference, real different.
You've done all kinds of stuff. And so
Mhm.
the equine assisted therapy, how do you get certified in that? That's so interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a couple of different agencies, I want to say, who do this. So I went with
Okay.
EGALA, which is
Okay.
Equine Assisted Growth and Learning. Yeah.
But now what can you do with that? Because people ask me that occasionally. They'll be like, I love horses. How can I travel and work with horses and help people? Like, I actually hear that question
Yeah.
occasionally. So,
Yeah.
like, where
How
would you
you do
go
it?
with that certification? Like, how would you apply it, like, out in the real world if somebody wanted to do something like that? I'm just curious. Yeah.
Meaning for a therapist who wanted to do
Yeah.
it?
Yeah. Like a therapist that might want to get
Yeah.
into that work.
Yeah. I would
Yeah.
connect with some barns, get the
Okay.
certification. And then if there's any local barns, just let them know what you do. And the way that EGALA is designed is that there's a therapist and there's the horse person who's sort of navigating and watching from a distance, but the therapist is the one who's using, these activities and the behaviors as
Ah,
that clinical process.
yeah.
It is neat. Even if you're not a horse lover, I highly recommend, at least trying to participate in one of the activities. Yeah.
Yeah, because you'll see, like, I'm a certified substance abuse counselor, so we
Yeah.
used to refer people to residential treatment of places, and there was always, like, an equine component, it
Yeah.
seemed like that was a huge piece that they tried to incorporate in a
Mm,
lot of residential treatment facilities. That's so
yeah.
interesting.
It's a good
Yeah.
start. It's a good
Mhm.
start, especially when there's trust issues.
Yes.
So to make a connection, develop that compassion and empathy and build on that. So I think it's really important, especially with individuals who do have trust issues with humans.
Yes, yes, yes. Okay, so then you went to Kaiser Permanente. I can never say that word
Yeah,
for some
right.
reason. I don't know
Took me
why
a
I can't say
while.
that word.
Yeah.
So you went there, and I guess how was that? Just like working for insurance. Was it like remote, or
Yeah.
were you like in an office kind
We
of thing?
were in an office.
Okay.
We started to move into remote,
Mm.
and we were just getting trained in it right around the time where I left. And interestingly enough, we all got the training, so it wasn't that foreign when COVID hit.
Huh.
But that was great. I loved my colleagues. The tough part was not being able to take a breath between patients. Yeah,
Yes.
it's a
So
lot.
you were in the role of actually still seeing patients that were employees of of Kaiser, or
Both federal government, anybody who had
oh,
Kaiser
oh, I
insurance.
see. Gotcha.
Yeah, so it's Kaiser's really, it's all under one roof. And if you
I
have
see.
Kaiser insurance, everything is at their facilities.
Okay. Yeah, because
Yeah.
I'm on LinkedIn and I always get these notifications like case manager for United Healthcare or something like that for a licensed therapist. And I always wonder,
Mhm.
like, people that do those jobs, those are sort of non-clinical, I think. They're like chart
Right.
audits and, like pre-authorization requests and that sort of thing. So I'm always curious about that job.
Right, right. Yes, no, we had people doing that for us, which was great. We
Great.
did our notes and all of that, but we got to really be clinicians. But things started to change after a while, and it was
Hmm.
7 clients a day to 9 clients a day to no
Mm.
lunch to no breaks, so it's a lot. It was,
And so much different, I guess, than just being out in Arizona in the middle of
yeah,
nowhere,
yeah,
whitewater rafting or whatever you guys did.
doing
Yeah.
therapy on the back of a horse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's talk about what you're doing now, because I think you're just living a really cool life now. And I'd love for people to hear how you're managing all of this.
This
Yeah.
is where it gets interesting. So I left Kaiser because my sister, my older sister, 17 months apart, got very sick and ended up in a facility, a nursing home facility. She was
Oh,
very young. She's probably 50 when she went in. And so I knew I had to get up here. And however I was going to do that, I had to turn my life upside down and just hope for the best and figure out where I was going to land, what I was going to do when I got back here. So I
yeah.
reconnected with the DBT clinic, stayed in touch with them for many years and was offered a position while building my own practice. And so I had my office and I was going to their office. I had 2 days and 3 days. So that was 2019. And then comes 2020. and the nursing home shut down. It was like 6 months before we could even get in and visit. So it was visits by window, and it was tough. So when things started to open up and we got the vaccines and we put our masks on and we were allowed back in at that time, and I got to spend the last few months with her at her bedside. So it was, I think as therapists, we are human and fallible too. So, we could have our vision and, what we have to do and get our practices up and running. And then there's that other side of it where we have to figure out our own emotions and to be able to process some of this. So when COVID happened and she was in the nursing home, that's when I bought the RV. That's when I got it. And, I joke with my friends because I say I'm the kind of person that puts the cart before the horse. Not always the best idea, but I did it this time. So I got the RV and then I was like, okay, I got to figure out how to do this. So started learning as I was going and taking small trips out. And at the same time, started to gut the whole thing and lay new floor down, upholster, paint, and trying to chip away and make it mine. And when my sister passed away, I just simply took the RV and I rented a house in upstate New York. And I was there for about a year. And at that time, I had a puppy. His name was River, and he was 2 years old. I was fostering him initially, and he was very sick and pretty much unadoptable. So I adopted him and tried to figure out what his illness was, took him to doctors, took him surgeons, specialists, anything. He had this big leg that nobody could figure out. And at that point, you could see there was some neurological issues happening. To the point that he mauled me. And it was probably the most terrifying experience of my life. But I lost my sister. I was like, I owe it to this dog to find out what this is. I'm not going to be able to lay my head down at night until I find out. So took him to a bunch of specialists, and basically the prognosis was whatever is causing this is now gone to his brain, and there was really not much more I could do. And then he went lame on his front leg. So it was the back leg, now the front leg, and this neurological stuff. Simultaneously, one of my best friends, my closest friend, had lost her only child. So this is January, where I ultimately had to put River down, which I thought was the second hardest thing I've encountered. So there was, this back to back within a year. And then finding out that my friend's son passed away, and I knew she was not going to survive it. And she told me she was not planning on staying on this planet without her son. So I said to her, she said, I don't want you to put on your therapist hat. I just need you to understand. And I said to her, I don't put my therapist hat on with friends, but I'm putting my friend hat on. And, there's this interesting phenomena, I guess, that happened that I never imagined I would have this experience. There was one side of me that was saying, okay, my therapist hat. Maybe I work with high-risk clients. Maybe she just needs to have this in her back pocket as an option. There was the other side that was saying she's going to do this. So when that realization hit, I called her. I want to say, River was January of 2022. And I packed up my house in February. And I begged her to please come on the road with me. Just come on the road. Let's do one last trip together. Let's just do this. Let's roam. She said, okay. And I'm thinking,
I've got goosebumps all over my body.
Yeah. I'm thinking there was part of me again that was saying, yeah, she's going to get on the road. She's going to love it. She's going to be amazed by this. Wherever she wants to land, I'll stay there with her. We'll heal her. Whatever I could do. I'm looking up equine programs for her, grief programs, all of this. And then there's this part of me that's saying, just be with her. So we were on the road for about 2 weeks. And when I said goodbye to her and she was going back home, I knew it was going to be the last time that I saw her. So Mother's Day of 2023, I get a text from her and she said, I want to thank you for, being a great friend and I love you and I'm sorry. And in a few hours, I won't be here. Okay. Now
Oh my
switch the
gosh.
therapist. Is
Yeah.
this a cry for help?
Right.
So I go back to where I filed away a conversation and I remembered the name of the bridge and I knew what kind of car she drove. I
Mm.
called a friend who knew her well and I said, I got this text. This is what's happening. I don't know if I can call the police because it will save her and she
Yeah.
will hate me. And he's like, I'll call them. So
Oh my gosh.
he called me back with the police. I gave them the name of the bridge. I gave them the car, the bumper sticker, everything. And they
Oh
found
my
her
gosh.
and they brought
Wow.
her to a hospital. And she texted me a scathing text.
Sure.
And she said you understood. And I wrote her back and I said, I did understand. I said, you texted me hours before
Mm.
you were going to do this. I don't know if it's, cry for help. I didn't know what it was. I said, but the other thing is, I'm the only one that knew this. Nobody else, your family didn't know, your friends didn't know. So you're going to search for peace in what you're about to do, but I'm going to be left with the suffering and I will
Exactly.
not be able to lay my head down.
Mm.
So she called me and she said, okay, I was angry at you for about 43 seconds.
Wow.
So she was in the hospital for a week. Her friends and family got to say goodbye. And we were all in, communication. Everybody was coming up with ideas to try to save her, to try to help her, programs, whatever it is. And I kept saying to them, I
Mm.
did that. I
Mm.
tried that. I was going to
Mhm.
buy her a horse. I took
Yeah.
her on our
Right.
trip. I brought her to a farm. I said, I'm
Wow.
going to buy, because she's a horse person.
Uh-huh.
I said, I'm going to get you a horse. Let's go. And we drive all the way there and they're closed.
Oh, no. Oh
Yeah.
my
So
gosh.
she said, I appreciate it, but I don't think a
Mm.
horse is going to do it. So I knew she was so
Gosh.
intent on this. And,
Mhm. Mm.
so now it was how do we all love her,
Mm.
allow her, and say goodbye to her. And 1 week later, and I did say to her, please don't text me
Yeah.
before
Right.
because it'll be like Groundhog Day and it
Yeah.
will happen again. And she didn't. And so we waited and we got the call from the police and they found her. And I have not come off the road since that day because
Mm.
I knew that I had to tap into the very thing that I believed so strongly in, and that is to allow myself to be immersed in nature and be in this RV and live the hardest days of my life so that I could lay my head down and go right to sleep and, to live with the unexpected, to live with the challenges, to live with challenges. I
Yeah.
heard a long time ago, Kim, I heard when I was probably about 17 years old, I heard an expression that says, the cure for grief is motion. And it became literal and figuratively. So I said, I'm giving myself 365 days in this RV to heal, to help my brain and to wire it and not let it go in that other direction of hopelessness and excruciating pain from these consecutive losses.
Yes.
There was a
And not
lot
to
of
mention the
flooding.
clinical work you did with
Yes.
9/11 and all of that. I mean, you many,
Hmm.
many years of this stuff. Wow.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh my
And
goodness.
so
Yes.
365 days of traveling,
Mm.
365 days in my RV, 365 days of hiking, rain
And
or
that
shine, no matter what.
oh my goodness. And that's what you're doing right now? Are you in the 365 days now or have you
I am
finished?
in
You're in
my
it.
second year.
Oh,
I
your second
just
year.
completed.
Oh,
I picked her up
wow.
on March 26th
Oh my
of
goodness.
23. So
Yeah.
this March was 2 years. Two
Oh my
years.
goodness.
Yeah. So every day was going out into the forest with my dogs.
Mm.
Some days I would just let it shine and bring it down into my body and my soul and recharge. And then there were days I was on my knees
Wow.
screaming, but
Yes.
who's going to hear me?
Well, that's true. If
Yes,
you're out and
yes.
isolated in your RV.
Mhm.
So what was the journey like for you? I mean, I hear what you're saying, like there were great days where
Yeah.
you're immersed and very happy, and then like, and that's the
Yeah.
process of grief anyway, I guess, is good days and not so good days and kind of working through it. So you just, before we hit record, you were saying that you kind of just go where the wind takes you too. I'd
Yeah.
love to hear about that process. It's like if you're having a bad week or a bad day with the grief process, does it make you want to get up and go to a certain place where you have memories, or just how, like, I just am
Hmm.
curious about the process for you, like how that
Yeah.
all worked for you. Yeah.
Yeah. It was really interesting because with that motion and, if things get tough, I'll just change my scenery but I also knew at the same time that it's not about running from it. The
Mhm.
goal wasn't to run from it. The goal was to keep moving because movement is what feeds my soul. And I want to add that it's not easy either because I have a chronic illness as well. I have fibromyalgia.
Oh my
So,
gosh. Yes.
but
Yes.
I've always been an active person. And I say,
Mhm.
I'm not going to injure myself. I'm not going to, I may end up in bed for 3 days, but a
Mhm.
lot of it is moving through it. And I think
Yes.
moving through the physical and moving through the emotional and not losing sight of the emotion
Wow.
because we've got to feel it. If we're talking about the waves of grief, honoring the process, honoring whatever comes up, the anger, honor it
Yes.
because you're allowed. The bargaining, I got stuck in bargaining for a
Mhm.
long time. That was where I think that stage of it was
Mhm.
big for me. And then going back out into the forest and looking through the eyes of my animals because they are in the present moment. And
Yes.
so sometimes it would have to be, sometimes it was a real challenge.
Mhm.
And then sometimes it was, yeah, I can do this. I can do this. And I also had this little voice that was saying, don't make any friends. Don't do that because
Oh,
that's another person to lose. You've got
yeah.
friends, you've got great community. Don't do it.
Mm.
And I ended up in Black Mountain, North Carolina. And
Wow.
my neighbor, who was a full timer there, she had a little dog. And I see her one day and she's got her little dog. And I see her a couple of days later and I was like, where's your dog? And she said, she just passed away. And right there,
Oh,
tears, hugs.
oh,
And she was probably like, oh my gosh, you didn't even know my dog, but she had
yeah.
no idea of the
Oh,
history.
yes.
So I
Mm.
stayed there through that winter and I said, okay, this was really my goal to see if I could make it through a winter in a 3-season RV. So I did a lot of research and I did a lot of insulating.
Oh
And
my
I stayed there
gosh.
through the winter. So my very good friend, Terry, we were hiking. She got another puppy. Our
Oh,
puppies were friends. And, we did it
aw.
every day. And well, I was taking trips in between, going to New
Mhm.
Orleans, going back
Mm.
up north. I did have to go back up north and help clear out my friend's house. And
Oh gosh.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, and that's where I got this because we made these with it was
Oh,
a map and,
yes.
showed where we lived apart.
Oh.
And, so it was an interesting experience. I left North Carolina and I went to Canada.
Oh my
From
gosh.
there, I just was
Nice.
like, okay, I want to see Canada,
Yeah.
so took
Yeah.
that very slow route going up and it's just been amazing. Been back down in North Carolina since then, reconnected with Terry. We hiked. So now this is like, as I share this story, I think to myself, I truly believe in, the power of nature and
Mhm.
the healing power and animals and a willingness to do it every day. I had to change
Mm.
my brain. So March 26th of this year, was the 2-year mark since I picked up Denise. And
Yes.
that day
Mm.
gets better, Kim. I found
Oh.
out that my beloved 5-year-old mountain cur was diagnosed with lymphoma.
Oh no.
And now, the great news is that
Mhm.
without a doubt, it was, because I have pet insurance too,
Yeah.
was let me get back to New York. Let me be
Mm.
where my largest support group is and got her into chemotherapy 5 sessions later. She's in remission.
Oh my gosh.
And
Yay.
yeah, so I truly believe that how this all unfolded, we cannot change the fate of anybody's life, but we can change how we look at it. We can change how we feel about it. We can honor whatever the experience is. We're allowed to fall to our knees and sob our eyes out and then get back up and do
Yes.
more healing.
Yes. And the insight you had to just be like, I've just got to go. I've just got to do this. And then to just keep moving, and
Yeah.
letting yourself heal and just like paying attention to when, the
Yeah.
connections felt right and staying around for
Mhm.
a while and then moving on to new connections and new adventures and that sort of thing. That's
Yeah.
amazing. All while navigating like healing from all this grief you had.
It was that,
Mm,
and I said this out loud to somebody. I don't think I can be a therapist
mm,
after that loss because,
mm,
if I think for a moment that I have any power
mm.
over saving the life of anybody, I'm disillusioned. It can't happen. I could do my best as a
Right.
therapist with the people that I work with, but everything else is out of my control. So
Mm,
how do I live a life that is out of my control
mhm.
and in, the parts that I can control? And even living in an RV, I always say the plan is there is no plan. Expect the unexpected. You don't know if
Yes.
one day you've got to be somewhere and you've got clients. I've got clients at 1 o'clock and it's 10 a.m. and I can't get my awning in. And now I'm
Yes.
in my manual and I'm on YouTube and I'm like, how do I
Oh
do
my
this?
gosh.
Yeah. So it's like rerouting and recalibrate. Yes.
Yeah, it housed the internet for you. I know that's always such a huge concern
That's,
for RVers.
yeah.
Do you use like Starlink or something like that? Or
I don't have Starlink
okay.
yet. I have a Wii Boost that's mounted up top,
Okay.
and then I have another Wi-Fi extender for when I am at camps with Wi-Fi, so that'll boost it.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's good. Nice.
And, with the apps these days, you could put in your criteria. It's like, okay, who has Wi-Fi? I love Hip Camp, and Hip
Mm.
Camps has that also. So,
Oh,
my
cool.
criteria, two must-haves,
Yeah.
Wi-Fi and hiking trails.
Yeah, I love it. It's
That's
great.
it. Everything else, I don't care.
That's amazing. Oh my gosh. Well,
Yeah.
what a journey. Thank you
Yeah.
for sharing with us. And it's like, seems like full circle to me. Like you started out in the adventure camps, being out in in nature and helping these kids like
Yeah.
heal in that environment. And then you kind of like did the same thing for yourself in a way,
Yes.
went on this adventure. And
Yeah.
so
Mhm.
any thoughts of like stopping or are you just going to keep going?
I get asked that question
Me
all the
too.
time. Yes, right. I don't have a reason yet to stop.
Yes. Yeah.
Maybe when there's a reason one day, the thing that happened with Tula, who's my dog, when that happened, I came to New York, I'm at mom and dad's. Thankfully, they've got, the big yard. I have the
Yeah.
RV on the side of it. It's all fenced in and I keep the gate open so the dogs are in and out all
Nice.
day. So I'll be here till August. She'll be done with her treatment then. And then
Oh,
she just loves being out. She loves it. She's a mountain cur. They're a
yeah.
very, very old breed, came over with the pioneers. And
Mm.
so I want to take her back to Maine.
Oh,
That's our
nice.
goal.
That's amazing. How
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Oh, what a great story. Thank you
Mm,
for sharing with us. I really appreciate
yeah.
you taking
Thank
the time
you.
today. And I don't know if anybody wants to reach out to you or talk to you, how would they find you?
Yeah, so I have, let's see, my Facebook page, which is my name.
Okay.
And I also have an Instagram. It is called 23 Feet of Fur because
Yeah.
I have the two dogs and one of them is a Shepherd Husky mix, both shedding breed, the most shedding breeds combined into one.
Oh
So
my gosh.
23 Feet of Fur is my Instagram.
Yeah.
And it's really, I think if you saw the posts, they're
Yeah.
typically just videos of our days out
Yeah.
and
I
added to
can't wait.
music. And it's actually the images of the journey.
Oh, I
Yeah.
love that. I can't wait to go
Mhm.
check it out.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are you in an
Thank you.
RV?
No, we live in Airbnbs. Yeah, so we just moved
Nice.
from Airbnb to Airbnb. My boyfriend's like a big tall guy and he's like, I never want to be in an RV.
Yes,
He needs
right.
lots of space.
They need fifth wheels.
Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly. Well, thank you so much for taking the time today. And I love hearing your journey and I hope it continues to be healing and wonderful for you and all of that stuff. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I know there's so many people out there. We all experience loss. We
Yeah.
experience it in our very personal ways. There's nobody who could tell you how to
Yeah.
do it, and there's no timeline. But if anybody wants to reach out and I know a little bit of the neuroscience and Rick Hansen stuff and changing the brain
Yeah.
and a whole lot of connecting with nature.
I love that so much. Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for allowing me to share their stories.